Well, good morning and welcome to the Monday show on Our Game here with myself, Michael Verney, kindly sponsored as always by OurGameSupporters.com. Unfortunately, the Galway guys came up short yesterday against Kerry, but there's a brilliant range of retro jerseys. You can go to OurGameSupporters.com, type in the promo code OurGame for 15% off. But this morning, John Evans is with me here. John, it's all about the kingdom this morning. The famine, the 8-year famine is over. What's the mood like in Kerry?
Oh, sure. Look, I'd have to say a relief. I suppose ecstasy from the performance of both teams yesterday in the final. It was top class. But the main thing is that it's relief. We've gone through semi-finals, finals, replays to get there. And yesterday was, it was the end of the rainbow. The pot of gold is there. Sam Maguire is home. It's where it should be in our thought process. And what a game we went through. It was just absolutely fabulous. I think that it's something that our Kerry minors and under 21s and that have been producing some wonderful players. But yesterday we got the reward finally. It just goes to show that you really, really have to work hard to win any All-Ireland. And the other thing I would say, and it is predominant in my mind, is that you can play wonderful football, but you've got to be defensively sound. And yesterday, right through this championship, this Kerry defence, which was their Achilles heel, they got it very right right throughout the championship this year.
Delighted to be joined by Longford footballer Mickey Quinn. Mickey, good morning.
Morning, Michael. Morning, John. How are you?
Morning, Mickey. How are you keeping?
Good. In good form after that. Good finish to the year. Was one of those games that was fairly cagey early on, but I think the cream rose to the top at the end and kind of finished stronger. But it's funny, they just pulled away in the second half, as you were saying there. There was a spell there where Galway just couldn't get the next score. I think they could have went 16, 17 minutes without getting the score. And it wasn't that they actually probably had a load of wides, as you were saying, Michael, or had a load of shorts. They just turnovers. I think there was a stat came out there after on the Sunday game that I think Kerry had 8 scores from turnovers, Galway had 2, and there's your 6-point gap. Everywhere else it seems fairly similar where the turnovers are coming for and or the scores were, but they were the key moments in the second half for me, that those critical moments, there was turnovers and Kerry got scores off them.
Yeah, John, can you just talk to me for a second about David Clifford? Things were probably under pressure a small bit in the first half from a Kerry point of view. Only kicked 2 points from play, actually back-to-back points, I think, in the David Clifford point in the 18th minute, Stephen O'Brien in the 20th minute. Struggled outside of that. Paul Ganey had a mark. Clifford had 2 big marks as well. But just probably Clifford in particular standing up during that period where a lot of other guys were probably struggling around him. I know he probably delivered the cream in the second half, but things weren't going particularly right for Kerry in that first half, and they were struggling to kind of break down Galway's defence, couldn't really get into much space, couldn't kind of manoeuvre much space to operate.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you this now. I trained David Clifford for a year, and it was at the year that Kerry played Galway in the minor final. And this is the makeup of him at 17 years of age. And Galway came back into the game, and it's that great goal he got. But he moved. He's a guy that will take the game by the scruff of the neck. He doesn't show up, but he's huge belief in himself, obviously. But he's huge aggression, and that manifests itself by going after the ball. And in that particular minor final, and I always quoted to him afterwards when I was coaching him what he did. He went out the field 75 yards, took a ball, and as we all know, he came in and soloed with the right and the left, and then the right again, and he stuck it into the left corner, of the top left-hand corner. That's the type of guy, and that's never left him. That willingness to take responsibility, that willingness to take the game by the scruff of the neck. He's not one of these guys that's going to wait for the ball to come. He'll go after it. He will chase it. And I suppose I'd have to put the icing on the cake. It reminds me a small bit when Conor Callahan came on the scene, is that Con started catching the ball over his head a new dimension. And by God, did Jack O'Connor use it yesterday when with the marks on the high ball in, and he feeling the ball. So David Clifford's psyche is all round, he's not just a dancer or a jigger or a turn with the left or the right. He's a guy that will go after it physically. He has the skill, he has the accuracy, but he uses his big body as well. And that was great to see yesterday, he rising off the ground, because we haven't seen too much of that before.
Mickey, he's probably, if you're building a prototype of a footballer, he probably has all the attributes. Well, he's about 6'3" or 6'4", probably the guts of about 15 stone, has left or right, has a sidestep. Tackling is probably the one thing that maybe is not his strength.
Yeah.
But as somebody said to me yesterday, Lionel Messi wasn't the best tackler in the world either. Just talk to me a bit about David Clifford and what he brings to the table, Mickey.
Yeah, look, if you ask Sean Kelly what's his tackling like, he knows about it. Like there's little things like that, and I couldn't get over Shane Walsh done the same, and Comer, and even it was Spillane, I think, that won that free where was it John Daly was looking for a free out.
Daly.
That's something that probably goes unnoticed a little bit with all forwards, that you get away with a harder hit as a forward than you will as a defender.
It's a forwards game, Mickey. It's a forwards game. I've always said it.
You. But that, like David, you don't get guys 6'2", 6'3" that moves the way he does, that has skills the way he has, that has the vision. Like you're talking about your total package right through, and as John alluded to there, taking responsibility, those leadership qualities from someone like that. And that was probably the questions that were probably been asked a little bit about Shane Walsh, that I suppose that turnover in the Derry game for him, it was a risky thing to do. He should have played the simple ball, and they could have seen that game out in normal time. But he stood up and he showed it yesterday that he does have that leadership quality. He took the game with a scruff of the neck for Galway, and it was probably disappointing to not see a few more of the Galway lads been able to contribute and help him out. But as for David Clifford, I think it's those moments in the game that you can see players like that Jesus, he hasn't been on the ball in a while. Okay, he hasn't done a whole pile, but then when he comes in, he's either getting a score or an assist. That's it. Whereas other guys could have 30, 40 touches in a game and mightn't have the same impact as what David Clifford has. And just the crowd stops when those players touch the ball, because you don't know what they're going to do or the quality that they bring to a game. They can turn the game on a sixpence.
Just a word, Mickey, on the way the game played out. Kerry probably approached the game in different ways. The first half, it was more kind of a couple of booming balls in. They got a bit of joy from it, but they definitely carried the ball a lot more, and it was maybe more intricate kind of kick passes inside in the second half. I think Killian Spillane was a big part of that, and I think they maybe brought more energy to proceedings. But 7 points in the first half, under a bit of pressure at half-time, kicked 13 points in the second half, got a lot more guys on the scoreboard. The second half was probably how they wanted to play the game. The first half was a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, it's funny too. The more you kind of think about it when you say that, the long high ball, obviously Galway tried to adopt 2 sweepers, probably either side of the D area. By forcing in those early long balls, probably got those sweepers to drop deeper, which meant that they allowed the running game more, which probably played in. It was a cute move. When you do say it out loud, you kind of think, right, that meant that those sweepers had to get back in quicker in front of your Comer or whoever is inside there, or sorry, your Clifford and Gainey had taken marks, which allowed for the running game, the likes of your Gavin Whites coming up the field. But I think probably Kerry didn't get the joy that they should have from that on the scoreboard, because I think they had 4 wides and 1 short in that period at the beginning of the game. But being able to change the game plan and adapt it, I think it kept Galway guessing that little bit. Although Galway were trying to keep it compact, that being able to change from plan A to B and change things up, it helped Kerry in the long run.
No, definitely, without a doubt. And even, I think it was the first final where there wasn't a goal scored on either side since 2015 when Dublin beat Kerry 12-9. And John, it's something you brought up earlier. Kerry's defence, there's no point in saying any different, has been their Achilles heel. Like, isn't it mad to think that they conceded 3 goals in 90 minutes against Tyrone last year in All-Ireland semi-final, and they conceded 3 goals this year in 16 games between McGrath Cup, League Munster and All-Ireland, an average concession rate of 0.23 goals per game, which I went back through. Donegal 2012, they conceded the guts of a goal a game. Tyrone last year, the guts of a goal a game. Dublin even in 2019. Like, it's unbelievable, the turnaround. Like, it's probably too simplistic to say that Paddy Tally has just come in and done all that, because I think Jack definitely learned a lot when he was with Kildare. But this is a different Kerry now defensively. They're adopting probably a safety first approach, and then get the lads on the ball up front when they can.
Well, look, there is no doubt about it. Down here in Kerry, we saw that the weakness of Kerry, and it was generally known that their defence was weak. We were good from midfield up, but our defence was weak. But can I say something, lads? Honestly, while looking at the game yesterday, I was hoping, and I don't mean this, but there was going to be no goal from either side. And my reasoning was that the shooting, the play, the setup, the pace, the work rate, everything, the skill, everything was just so vibrant, so there in front of you. There was no, okay, we can say there was one or two chances either side. But I was just hoping that I thought that a goal would destroy the game, if you know what I mean. The atmosphere was brilliant. The shooting, Shane Walsh, mother of God, you know, his point scoring was just awesome, and there were some terrific scores. But it was just like the two boxers. You were hoping that none of them would get knocked out, that they'd keep going by blow by blow by blow. But to answer your question, certainly it was Kerry's Achilles heel. You know, against Tyrone, they conceded 2 goals. You know, it was taking the sting out of them, and they weren't reacting well to it, I suppose, as well. You'd have to say that. And the defence tightened up. Tisn't just quite simply that Paddy Tally came in and sprinkled a bit of gold dust around us and everything sealed up. I think Jack O'Connor demanded an awful lot physically, and the building the defence. And in yesterday, in playing Diarmuid O'Connor, 3 midfielders, Diarmuid O'Connor, David Moran and Jack Barry, I think it showed that he was going to be tightening up the defence. And it wasn't just Tadhg Morley that was in there. David Moran was in there as well. And they Kerry, against the trend of thought down here in Kerry, we did use 2 sweepers at times. We definitely used one all the time in Tadhg Morley, and it worked. And as Mickey said, then you have the Gavin White travelling out of defence, Tomlo Sullivan, and of course Stephen O'Brien is another one. And look at the 2 blocks he got in yesterday. Fabulous blocks. Goal-saving block off of Johnny Heaney, I think, and the other one was off of Paul Conroy, I think. You know, so these guys are no longer, you're looking then, you're saying, why isn't Shawnee Shea in the game? He's out there in the middle of the field. He's back in the 14-yard line. So Kerry are using the 13, 14, and as Mickey says, maybe David Clifford isn't the best tackler in the world, so they keep him up. But, you know, their structure of their team, I suppose, the tenacity of their backs, and certainly, as I said again, Paddy Tally, he's made a huge influence it without taking too much from Kerry. They're not beating teams with 1,000 lashes. Or, you know, they're not beating teams. They're beating teams by breaking fast, some wonderful scores. So that change of structure by Jack O'Connor, he has to get the laudits. He has to, tactically, he got it very, very right. And look, there was no goals conceded. That's the question you asked me. That was so important for Kerry. Everybody was going to put their body in the line, and they did.
John, would there have been many noses out of joint? They're probably less out of joint now, but would there have been many noses out of joint down in Kerry? Just at the thought of bringing someone down from Tyrone to help with the defensive style of football. Obviously, it's all totally worthwhile now, and it has totally paid off. But would there have been many noses out of joint to say if Kerry hadn't got over the line?
Look, I suppose there would have been a raised eyebrow rather than a nose out of joint. You know, look, everybody knew that there was a weakness there. It was, and when Jack O'Connor came in, I suppose Jack, as we know, is ruthless. Look what he did at half-time yesterday. Paul Ganey had a couple of wides. David Moran had a couple of fouls, a couple of misplaced kicks out of the line and stuff like that. He took them off, and he doesn't stand in ceremony. He's he may not be liked for a lot of things, but one thing he's admired for is his shrewdness. And certainly in bringing in Paddy Tally, he those are eyes raised. But look, he obviously knew Paddy Tally. Mickey and myself would know Paddy from playing against him in different in the lower leagues, we'll call it, Mickey, but a small bit. But he certainly he's a shrewd operator, and I suppose he really rose to in bringing St. Mary's and winning the Sigerson. And I think, if my memory is right, I think that Sigerson final was something like 7-6 or something like that.
Yeah.
There's certainly low scoring anyway. So it was on the defensive side that he really won his accolades. And down here in Kerry, we know our football, we know where the weakness is, and I think they would have backed Jack O'Connor. Raised eyebrows, but certainly we knew that was a bit of an Achilles heel. And look, your stats, you've certainly gone back over the stats there, Michael, yourself. God, it proves it. It proves it, no doubt about it. No goals.
Boys, the two of you have both been around inter-county squads, and you see how difficult and how long it can take for things to bend in, particularly new patterns of play, new systems. Mickey, has that surprised you? How, you'd have to say it's been seamless enough with Kerry's defensive structure. The 3 goals they conceded this year, one was kind of a wonder goal by Darren McCurry. A ball was played in over the top on a counter-attack. Cormac Costello's goal was definitely a wonder goal. There was about half a yard he could put it into. And I think the one against Monaghan in the league was a fairly dubious penalty, where I counted last night, there were 9 Kerry lads inside the 13-yard line. So it wasn't for the one to try in anyway. But that's a difficult thing to pull off as seamlessly, Mickey, as Kerry have pulled it off. It's amazing, really.
I think it depends on the squad that's there. Straight away, it's 8 years since Kerry won. They realised that the playing group, the management, the supporters, everyone need something had to change, and probably the openness and the buy-in to go with something like that, and realise it's all well and good playing lovely branded football and getting big scores, but can't be naive to it and think that we can actually do this part of the game, which is it's as important as the attack. And I think that's something, when you have the calibre of lads with Geaney, David Moore, and right down to the younger guys on that team, with your Spillans and Whites coming through, I think there's a realisation here that, okay, we have an opportunity, but we need to change. You can't keep doing the same thing. Those guys have been around the block for maybe the last 8 years. I've seen what worked in the past and what hasn't worked the last couple of years against Dublin and these teams, and to realise, okay, we need change. And obviously Tally brought that, and they bought into it. And I think that's something, even you look at your Sean O'Shea, and he happened the greatest game under the sun yesterday, but is he an All-Ireland winning captain this morning? He is. And do you think he cares whether he played his role for the team, whether that was tracking back, whether that was organising, whether it was coming out, leaving space for someone else? And probably when you sit down and look at the game again, you might realise that actually, do you know what? He played his role, or what he was supposed to do, as well as he could have. He would have loved to kick a few points from play and contribute to the scoreboard, but he's an All-Ireland winning captain. It's funny just to see the difference in the semi-final and the final. It was very stop-start, and I think Galway were trying to dictate the tempo of the game early on by keeping it really slow. They didn't want to Kerry to kind of ramp things up and go at them, because I think that's when Galway won't have the defensive structure set up, and they won't be able to defend against your Cliffords. They need slow play to try and control a big structured defence, because if you're exposed 1-on-1 or even 2-on-1 against a Clifford, or even some of Gainey's catches as well inside there, that you're going to be under pressure. And I think in the second half, that game, the kind of chaos started to creep into it, and that's where Kerry stretched from Galway. That there was a few turnovers around the middle third. there's a few scores came off maybe silly mistakes or that, and I think that's what Kerry fed off. And whether that be the work rate that Kerry brought, or whether it be what Paddy Talley brought or Jack O'Connor brought to this team, but as much as it's coaching or whatever, there's a mindset there that a willingness to do it is the big thing.
Just, I might throw this comment from one of our viewers to you, John. Adrian McGrath kind of links into the point Mickey was saying there. He said, Galway had no substitutes. Kerry did when the time came to win the game. Kerry had more energy, so they made less mistakes in the last 20 minutes. There's nothing more complicated about it than that. Is it as simplistic as that? You definitely would say Kerry got more of a bounce off their bench anyway. Like even Joe O'Connor flying through for that last free. They were bringing serious energy, and their mistakes probably went down as a result where Galway potentially made some tired mistakes at the end.
Yeah, well, look, there is no doubt about it. Galway tired, and certainly the bounce off the bench, as one would call it, was terrific for Kerry. And there is no doubt of it. Straight at half time, as I've already alluded to, with the two Spillans coming in. But I suppose there is, it's easy to call it now, but there was a few that decision to give Kerry the free. Initially when I saw it, I thought that was jeepers. It was a cheap free. Like, it should have been a free out because the hand went in over the shoulder, and but with John Daly, but on those sort of things, games are won and lost. Sean Hurston had a good game. Let me tell you, he had a right good game, and it was a game that was sort of easy. There was no cynical stuff going on. It was not that much anyway, and it was a free-flowing game. But look, the bounce off the bench is great when you win, and it looks all the right decisions. But there's an overriding thing that's gonna say, and it hasn't been mentioned before by anybody, but it just came through as I was saying about no goals in the game yesterday, as I was watching it so closely. Jack O'Connor came into a situation that Peter Kane had created, where all those players had been there in front of him. He had been watching them for 2 years against Dublin, replay, against Tyrone, the extra time. Yeah, we saw what the Achilles, we've spoken about the Achilles heel of the Kerry team. But the one thing that was there, lads, are the players. The players were there. So it's about restructuring them. It's about building a bench. It's about having who was going to start and who was going to come on. All those things were there by Peter Kane. And you'd have to say this, the previous manager. So for Jack O'Connor, with his new management team, they could analyse it. Exactly what you've done there, Michael. You could go back and look at the stats. You could go back and look at the game and see what's beating them. We need a bench, and I think that really came out of the training camp. And talking to a few players back, we'll say after Munster finals now, or quarter-finals and semi-finals, the one thing was the competitive nature within the group. It kept the fighting spirit in the training field, which was apparently absolutely horrendous. And everybody was getting the most out of each other because of the panel and the bench. And hence, when the lads came in yesterday, they had a more experienced bench, I suppose, a more potent bench, because, my God, Tony Brosnan didn't get on there yesterday. Lethal forward, absolutely lethal. But so that freshness, that it certainly stood out yesterday. But lads, there wasn't that much in it. It was in the last 3 or 4 minutes that I think Kerry got 2 to 3 points there. There wasn't that much in it, and I think it's going to stand to Galway. Padraig Joyce has had to rebuild that team, bring in so many new fellas. I think he's brought in 17 new in this year alone into the panel. So Galway are not gone away, and it's slightly unfair to say that yes, Galway have a good team and their bench is going to develop. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. Whereas Kerry, they've been there. They've lost the semi-finals, they've lost the finals, they've gone to extra time, they've lost replays. The structure was there, I thought, and the competitive edge was frightening apparently inside there.
Yeah, as John says there, Mickey, the largely has been the same personnel that Peter Keane used. It was just probably a matter of refining it a bit more and maybe getting that defensive structure in place. We probably haven't talked enough about Galway, Mickey. Like for the guts of 60, 65 minutes, this was a brilliant performance. It looked like they'd played it really, really smart. They were really, really solid at the back. Clifford, the couple of points Clifford got in the first half, even marks, very, very hard to defend. They weren't really cut open. It's hard to know what way to look at it from a Galway point of view. Yes, it was a brilliant performance. Is there a sense of an opportunity missed somewhat as well? Like you just don't know maybe when they'll get back to this position again, but you'd have to say it was a really brilliant performance and they got an awful lot right.
Definitely, and you're looking at, they got so much right and still so much room for improvement too. So you're kind of looking, what can they add going forward the next couple of years? It's funny, going from the Derry game to the Kerry game, I think Galway ended up going a massive spell in the first half against Derry without getting on the scoreboard at all. I think it could have been 19-20 minutes before they got on the scoreboard. Obviously a lot lower scoring, but then yesterday it kind of changed. That spell came in the second half. So when someone has their purple patch, you try and limit it as best you can, and when you get your purple patch, you want to take and make the most of it. And I think, was it 10 minutes into the second half, Galway were up 14-12, and then they didn't hit another score, or Kerry hit 4 unanswered points in the next 12 minutes, and I think Galway didn't score for 17 minutes in the second half. You know, little things like that you want the scoreboard ticking, and then 4 unanswered points in an All-Ireland final at any stage, it's going to put you under pressure. And I think as much as the bench and the subs making a difference, that bit of a turning point had came before those guys came on, and I think the subs just turned the screw that bit more, and it gave Kerry the breathing room then after that. That, you know, your Paul Conroy been taken off around the middle, and I think, who was it? Patrick Kelly went to midfield, then Patrick Kelly was moved from there inside into the full forward line. I think Galway were trying to reshuffle the deck a little bit, with the likes of Conroy going off. They weren't able to get the deck right, and as was mentioned there, probably didn't have the same quality coming off the bench.
As you said there, Mickey, I think it was Killian McDade put them 14-12 ahead in the 47th minute, didn't score again until the 64th minute. Shane Walsh free, Killian McDade again brought them level, and then including injury time, they didn't score for the last 10 minutes where Kerry outscored them 4-0. So just those 27 minutes of the second half they didn't score, that's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. I didn't do it, the stats at the time, but I remember saying to the man alongside me when they were 14-12, 3 mistakes Galway made. They did a bad turnover, 3 mistakes on the trot, which the first thing, I suppose, as a manager, you look at it is that, look, I mean this in the best of terms, but did they get a nosebleed that they went 14-12 ahead into the second half? 3 mistakes, a couple of very, very easy turnovers, sloppy at the wrong time. It allowed Kerry come back into the game, and you'd have to say, Jesus, did Kerry deserve this? Of course they deserve it when they scored, but the sloppiness that was in Kerry, and this is what came through my head, that used to be in Kerry in the previous years, where we'd be ahead, we'd make a couple of silly mistakes, and I think you'd simply put it down to a bit of experience. And I think when Galway look back on this game, lads, it won't be the last 7 or 8 minutes they look at too handily. It's when they win 14-12 up, everything done right, looking good, and the next thing they made those 3 mistakes, and I think that turned the game. And let me tell you, turned the game. It gave Kerry firepower. It gave him a springboard. Yeah, these guys do make mistakes. We'll go at them, and they got a couple of very, very handy points, and away Kerry went after that. Critical time.
You could sense that in the crowd, John, couldn't you? You could see the tide turning. The Kerry fans really got behind Kerry at that stage, And you could see, as you said, you could see the goal was starting to just, oh, hang on a minute, what do we do here? And I think it was Killian McDade could have one or two of those turnovers, but either side of that, he kicked 2 great points. So like he was the one, he was trying to drive and get something for Galway. And those turnovers, 8 scores from turnovers for Kerry and 2 for Galway. And then you look at the Dublin Kerry game, that was littered with turnovers on both sides. And it was probably an up and down game, but I think those turnovers yesterday, I think that was the difference. Kerry exposed them and made the most of them.
Just a couple of quick comments in from Flash. He just said, delighted to see Kerry win yesterday. Clifford on course to go down as the greatest footballer of all time. It's amazing that people we talk in those terms after 5 years of inter-county football, but that's kind of what we're dealing with. And his last comment just said, and I'll throw this to you, John. Now that this Kerry group finally got their All-Ireland, it'll be interesting to see how many they can go on to win. It's not as cut and dry, is it, that they're going to take over the next 4 to 5 years, but you'd imagine this would be a big monkey off their back. They've beaten Dublin, they've got the Holy Grail back, they've ended the famine. Do you expect a big release over the next couple of years, a release of pressure? Can they express themselves even a bit more over the coming years? And what do you think that will manifest in? We'll just say, if we were to say over the next 5 years, potentially how many more All-Irelands can this team win?
Lads, I think a lot of that is headlines that are just thrown away. Look, the difference between theory and practice and reality are totally different. Like, look, Galway are going to improve. That's number one. Dublin are not gone away. You put Conor O'Callaghan, and thanks, we thank our stars that Conor O'Callaghan wasn't playing against us in the semi-final, for God's sake. Look, they're not going away. Tyrone will take a breather and have a good look. And Armagh and Derry have shown great potential. This thing of, we're going to be, I think it was 2 years ago, that was in their heads. That's the last thing the players want to hear and see, is that, okay, I think it was David Clifford said, we're only getting started. That's good talk after a game, but in reality, they know themselves. And Cork are a young team and got great experience, and don't tell me they're going to take a step backwards. So to me, I think that there's no divine right, there's nothing earned, and they'll go again next year. They'll be the favourites. And often that the favourite tag weighs heavily on certain teams' shoulders. So no, I don't see that happening. I think the top 5 or 6 teams, any of them could win it now at this stage. And for me, anyway, it's a great start. It's huge relief. I think in a couple of weeks' time, when everything settles down, that you'll have maybe David Moran or Paul Ganey may have a consideration. They're big boots to fill, lads. And it's grand coming off Killian Spillane coming off the bench and having an impact. When you have to stand up and be the man there, it's a different ball game. So listen, I don't see that happening. I think we have a great chance. That's the way I look at it. I think we have a great chance of being back in Croke Park again, and I think given performances like we saw yesterday, a team performance. And look, I suppose we're constantly talking about Kerry, but I see Padraig Joyce going back, grind the teeth. He's put that confidence into the team. I think he is going to say, hey, a couple more of you could have stood up there yesterday. A couple more of you could have played better. And had we done it, we could have won an All-Ireland, and they'll work towards that. Now, whether Paul Conroy stays on or not in the heel of the hunt, they have a young team. You must remember that Sean Kelly and David Clifford marked each other in the Sigerson. A lot of these guys a lot of the Galway team are very, very young. The last thing I'd say about Galway is that, not getting away from the Kerry scene, but McDade was away. I don't know how long he was away in Australian rules. I think the Galway team need to strengthen a small bit more. They're a young team. They'll get their levels of fitness up. Mickey Quinn alluded to it there, and yourself, Michael, that maybe that last 15 minutes where Kerry outscored them 8 points to 2, that's endurance. That's hard work. That's winter work. That's gym work. That's strength and conditioning stuff. That's what they've got to get right. Because Galway, look, traditionally, they're a hugely skillful team. They've shown that. So overall, Kerry could to take over? Not at all. It's going to be very close, and I think that's the way football has gone. And she'll look at the Dublin-Kerry game, a point in it, and as I said already, Conor Callahan at home, and Mannion away, and Jack McCaffrey, following his career. Look, nothing is written in stone.
Richard Hogan, one of our viewers, says, I'd say John would be looking for Con to pick up the hurley with the Dubs. A couple of winky faces. I'd say he's not too far off.
Brilliant.
By the hurl firm.
Yeah, I'd say there could be 2 star hurleys been sent up to Dalkey or wherever Con is residing with John Evans' address on the back of it. But just on that, on Galway, a lot of locals in Galway would highlight a lot of the guys that aren't in the squad at the moment, potentially, and that they've lost in recent years. So there are maybe more footballers in Galway, and you'd say maybe to even get themselves in the position that they did, missing some of the big players that they are is a feat in itself. But Mickey, I'll just throw that Kerry question to you. Like, what do you think Kerry can achieve over the next couple of years? And would you be of the same frame of mind of John in thinking that it's kind of, is it anybody's to win over the next 3 or 4 years, or is there potential for Kerry to dominate?
Oh, there's always potential, but geez, I think, I don't think so. I think there's that many teams there. Going from trying to break that duck of 8 years to going talking about Kerry are going to dominate, they're polar opposites, and it's unfair. I suppose we're all kind of looking at Dublin, what they done, and thinking, okay, now it's Kerry's turn. It just football doesn't work that way. And if that mindset is slightly off, if someone lets the foot off the throttle a little bit, and if you think, okay, we're champions now, look at your Tyrone last year. Football doesn't work that way, and sport doesn't. And I think it takes a big, strong playing group, management group, backroom team to instill that and go again and put back 2 back-to-back, let alone 3 after that. Getting 2 in a row would be a huge achievement, and then go from there. Like you see your Dublins, how they went bit by bit by bit, and then when you take a step back and realise, Jesus, they've dominated for the last 7-8 years. To get to that stage takes a lot. You take out your Guineas and your Morans out of that, not only are the big boots to fill, but looking in from the outside, they are huge leaders, and I'd say they've taken a lot of those younger guys under their wing and brought them through the last few years. So those guys, they're not as easily replaced, and I think you look at the Dublin squad, there's certain lads that aren't as easily replaced as we think. So I think there could be 4 or 5 teams pushing for next year, and it makes it exciting.
Just on that point, and John has probably said it as well, we had Seamus Moynihan on a panel with us in Galway last week, and a similar kind of question was thrown to him, and he said the same. He said that he actually wasn't sure whether the same reserves were there waiting, or if the conveyor belt is waiting. A lot of those minors have come through now. Some of the good under 20, 21 sides have come through now, so they will have a job in their hands to replace the likes of David Moore and Paul Ganey over the next couple of years. John, I'll just throw this one at you. Traumspieler just wrote in, a great game, a performance for the ages by Walsh, McDade and David Clifford, but the free against John Daly on 67 minutes was a shocker of a decision. Huge momentum swing. Galway must be fuming at it. They definitely were, because I know Pádraig Joyce was very put out over it. There was a big turning point in the game, but we've gotten the guts of 40 minutes in. We haven't talked enough about Shane Walsh's performance yesterday. Left and right, like him and Clifford must be the 2 most naturally gifted players in the country, in the sense of you don't know whether they're left-footed, you don't know whether they're right-footed, but he was an absolute joy to watch yesterday. The one point that stood out for me was the one under the Cusick stand where he was double-teamed. Tyke Morley came over and got in around him as well, and he still managed to kick a boomer with his right foot. What a performance from a losing team, because it's difficult, it's particularly difficult when your team are maybe chasing it, but he was just brilliant yesterday. What a display.
Shane Walsh, I've been watching him for the last, I suppose, 5, 6, what am I saying, 7 or 8 years. I'm an admirer of his and take my hat off to him. He is just awesome, and he's doing these runs. I think Sean Kavanagh was coming from that side and do a jink, and he'd always put it over the bar. But Shane Walsh has pace. And if you look at him physically, he's absolutely languid. He's power paced. He's balanced, and he's such a fine player. Like he needs a gas guy. And he had Tom Sullivan on him yesterday, and Tom Sullivan is the fastest back we have. And look, he just left him for dead. That show you power, skill, and guys. But his accuracy is uncanny. And again, look at his left leg. He's taking frees with. He's shooting from with his right leg from 43, 44 yards out on the left. Mother of God, he's great hands. And look, for a guy that's so mild-mannered, he's so aggressive with his runs. He goes into areas that you don't expect him to go. So, I mean, he's absolutely wonderful. But, Padraig Joyce must be scratching his head and say, hey, why can't they get all these guys together? Why doesn't Comer come at the same time as Shane Walsh? Why doesn't Rob Finnerty come at the same time? Why doesn't Patrick Kelly? All these, Matthew Tierney, all these guys. Okay, McDade did. But these guys, I think he's going to be reiterating this to the Galway team that, hey, we looked good as if we were going toe-to-toe with Kerry. Yes, and we had good teamwork and we had good pace. But I think he's going to be asking and demanding more because, by God, as a player, he set very high standards himself. And I think he's going to go after this Galway team and he'll make them better next year. And Shane Walsh will be their leader, no doubt about it. But a few more has to stand up with him. My admiration for Shane Walsh goes back. I remember being above, I think it was actually above in your country, Mickey, in Longford, and there was a double game on, and Galway were playing before us when I was with Roscommon, and I watched him give a masterful display of left and right, outright near the sideline and scoring. And I said to Kevin Walsh afterwards, I says, oh, what type of guy? He says, and Kevin answered me, he says, he's everybody's dream, he says. But he says, if I got to know what was inside his head at any given time, I'd give my left arm for it. But, and anybody is in other words, he's a naturally gifted footballer. And anybody that natural, you have to admire them.
Just on that, Mickey, Shane Walsh, just a word on Shane Walsh's brilliance yesterday. And also how good of a job Kerry probably did at nullifying Comer. The bodies they had in around the D in particular to nullify Comer probably benefited Walsh a bit because I think he got a bit more latitude. But as John says there, if Galway could get it on a given day and a big day where they can get the two of those firing and potentially Rob Finnerty as well. I thought Rob Finnerty was really well marshalled by Graham O'Sullivan, who was, to me, I think he was nearly Kerry's best player. I have to say, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. But just a word on Shane Walsh and just a word on Comer.
They're the guys you go to see playing, and that's why you pay to see your Clifford, to see your Walsh. And it's funny too when you talk about that score that he kicked in the first half, that the way he cut in, probably a mirror image a little bit of David Clifford's point or his goal that he got in that minor. He picked it up in the same spot. But when you have those caliber of players picking a ball up outside your 45, you think you're in a good position. Okay, he's drifting. We're all right here. Shane Walsh picks up balls in the middle third, out on the sideline, and think, okay, we're not under pressure here. And all of a sudden, he could drive, he could get in for a goal into the 21, or he's clipping them over from just inside the 45. You talk about your shooting zones and scoring zones with those guys. That once they cross the 45 and maybe 3 yards outside it, they could pull the trigger. And Tom O'Sullivan in the second half, or I think it was, tried to show him the sideline, don't let him cut in. Okay, he's turned back onto his left boot and his right boot, and he swings this point that he's not going to hit this. He won't hit it. And then as a defender, you kind of think, okay, I'm all right here. Percentage low, this won't go over. And you're looking over your shoulder as a defender thinking, what more could I have done? I didn't let him creep inside me for a goal. I stood him up, turned him back. And these guys are just able to pull the trigger off one or two steps. And that's why you play or you go to games, is to watch that. And I suppose the game gets very safe, and everyone plays it robotically, and I think that was something that was maybe thrown at Dublin a little bit, that their players were very safe and the percentages. But we had a coach that once told us that there's thoroughbred horses and there's donkeys, and the donkeys get the balls to the thoroughbreds and they do the rest for you. So I don't know what category. I think I'm one of the donkeys or mules at this stage. So and you need them, but you know, at the end of the day, you want those players to take those risks and chances, and when they go over like that, with Clifford or Walsh, that's what you want to see as a Gaelic football fan.
Well, you're definitely not a donkey anyway. I know I've been a donkey on the hurling pitch and the football pitch, but I definitely wouldn't put you in that category. I think from a manager's point of view is if you can get inside the donkey's head and get him to realize that just get the ball to your thoroughbred.
Get the donkey to kick.
Yeah,
if I had 15 Mickey Quinns, I'll tell you something. I'd be looking at Sam Maguire myself.
You have no one left in the fence, John.
John, just a quick one, because I know you have to go in a second. Just like
no, you're okay.
Yeah, Jack O'Connor's third coming, like to win an All-Ireland in 3 separate reigns. It's mad to think that Tyrone won the All-Ireland in 2003. Jack O'Connor won the league, Munster and All-Ireland in 2004. He did the same in 2006 after Tyrone. He did the same in 2009 after Tyrone. And he did the same in 2022 after Tyrone, which is just, I don't know if it's a bizarre coincidence or what it is. But there was quite a bit of pressure on him, John, to come back. There was obviously a bit of controversy over how Peter Keane exited at the time. But like, it's just like, you'd have to say, like, it's the perfect season. They're unbeaten the whole way throughout the year. Just a brilliant season. Well, no, sorry, they lost one league game, but aside from that, near perfection.
Yeah, look. I suppose Jack does it his way. Some people say it is a bit traditional and old-fashioned, and that. I mean, guys, actually, going back to it, I think. 2 of the players actually played a Sigerson Cup and a McGrath Cup on the same day. Tony Brosnan was one of them.
Jack Savage,
anyway, yeah. So look, he expects an awful lot of players, demands an awful lot of players, and he gets that. He has that respect that they give him. They answer the call for him every time. So look. I think somebody said it there yesterday. Is that? One of the players said it, is that when you have an experienced and winning manager coming into your dressing room, that has a proven track record, it instills more belief into the players. It instills that camaraderie, and what he does is right. It's not questioned. There's no guessing game there. There's no room to guess. It is what it is. And as they say down here in Kerry, right or wrong, he's right. You know, and there's that goes a long way in ensuring that everybody does the same thing anyway. Look, SNC guys, Jack doesn't have him dripping off his finger, but in McGahan he's a good one, and he doesn't do anything dramatic, like, you know. He just instills the values, and his language, lads, is very, very down to earth. There's no big words, and there's a lot of yarras thrown into it, and but he gets his points across, and he's a good man manager as well as a team manager. Solid, you know. Is it luck? I don't think it's luck. I think he's a good manager. I think he's lethal, lads. He's absolutely lethal. He doesn't take prisoners, and if you stop taking off Paul Ganey and David Morden in an All-Ireland semi-final at half-time, listen, he doesn't hang about, and he's clinical. So, look, I think it's not a coincidence. I think 04, 06, and 09, you know, there wasn't too much luck attached to it. But yesterday, he was pushed and pushed and pushed, and I think they made the right calls. And as Mickey alluded to yesterday already in the program, is that he got his tactics very, very right, I thought. One thing that came across was that when Kerry played Mayo, in the All Ireland final. He dropped Mike Frank Russell, a clubman of my own, and put in Johnny Crowley. And Jesus, there was pandemonium about it, like, you know. But sure, Johnny Crowley won the game on his own. High ball going in. What do we see yesterday? High ball going in again. You know, Jack is traditional enough, you know, and the lads like it because they don't like too much tactical new all the time. You know, you had ball is there for kicking, and certainly Kerry kicked it yesterday.
Just an interesting one on Jack. You say he's kind of mixed the traditional with the modern. He was 8 years out of inter-county football management when he came in over Kildare in 2020. They were hit with 5 goals in the second half of the Leinster semi-final against Meath. They have conceded, in his management teams, both Kildare and Kerry, in the 2 years since 2021-2022 league and championship, have conceded a sum total of 5 goals in all of those games across the 4 competitions. So while there was a bit of controversy about his exit from Kildare, he definitely learned a massive amount there and implemented it down in Kerry to Kerry's benefit. The last one, I'll put this to you, John, just a little aside, a question in here from Shawnee K. He said, Pat McEnany, the well-known referee or former referee, said VAR has to come into GA. He said decisions are too important. You need to get them right. What would your thoughts be on that, John? I'll leave you that this can be your parting shot. Would you be a fan of VAR?
Absolutely. I've been an adamant for the last 15 years at inter-county football that we should have a third referee, and if that's an electronic referee, I'd go with that as well.
Okay, brilliant, John. Thanks a million for joining us. I appreciate that, Mickey. I'll keep you for another couple of minutes if that's all right.
Okay. Nice talking to you, lads. Good stuff.
John. Good man. Mickey, what would your thoughts be on VAR? You're obviously a player. You don't like to see big decisions maybe turned on a mistake potentially, but it's also time consuming. It's also not the most reliable at times as well, and we've seen controversial VAR decisions as well.
I think there's scope for it, but I think something like that, it's on a big scale. I think the easier option would be 2 referees, and how you manage that, whether it be a half each or something like that. There's more room for scope and improvement on that. You know, little decisions that might happen that, okay, right, I'll give you can go for a second opinion there, and you see 2 referees or umpires talking to each other that might have a better understanding of the game rather than going to an umpire. I think the umpires have gone to probably more so than the sideline, the sidelines men. I think as much as is probably talked about your VAR and your Hawkeye, I think 2 referees or maybe the sidelines man having more of an impact on the game, that okay, they're able to keep track of the sideline and do a little bit more. So how they work that, try and have a different umpiring team, similar to maybe the AFL or what's happening there. Or even the way the soccer linesmen, they cover certain offsides and certain areas, or the line. You know, there's little room for scope, but I don't think going the VAR route. You see, it's still fairly controversial at the moment, some of the decisions that are happening in soccer, and I think the whole point in VAR or visual aid there is to try and take away that controversy and to help things. So it mightn't be just the way to go just yet.
I'd be of a similar mind to you. I think we need to make more use of the officials that we have at our disposal. Fergus Butler just asked the question, should the umpires be trained referees? Would definitely help, even if some sort of kind of qualifications in that regard, just to know exactly what they're doing. Just to look at the year as a whole, Mickey, before we finish up, are we looking at David Clifford, Footballer of the Year, potentially now? Is he the front runner, would you say?
Possibly, yeah. I think, look, there's a few. Walsh probably had a quiet semi-final in compared to Clifford, or in compared to his final too. You know, like there's going to be a few guys thereabouts for it. I think probably all in all, looking at it, I think did Clifford miss? Was it the quarter final or the Munster final?
Missed the Munster final against Limerick. Yeah.
Yeah. So. But in saying that, 8 points or 9 points in an All-Ireland final, I think usually someone that does that, they're not a shoe-in, but they're right up there anyway. So I think him or 1 or 2 other guys are going to be battling it out there.
Mickey, you probably came on thinking you were just going to talk about the All-Ireland final, but we're going to have to throw a little personal question in. And the situation in Longford is obviously you're without a manager. I think Billy has commitments in the US. What's the state of play at the moment? And you've been a brilliant servant for over a decade now. Or have you considered your own future? I hope you're thinking about going again, if at all possible.
Yeah, look, the body is good and kind of body feeling good. But look, it's kind of, you want to get through the club season and see where you're at then, and with family and that, and take it from there. So look, I'm kind of happy enough where I'm going at the moment, and if I can keep injury free and keep taking over, it'd be a huge help. And yeah, the search is on now. Look, at kind of with Billy and that, he kind of had a difficult job on his hands coming in so late, and it kind of it wasn't ideal for him, and I wish him all the best with work and with wherever he heads in the managerial world next. But the way it happened wasn't ideal for him in the first place. But look, I don't know what the next step is for us. I think the big thing is that we can get ourselves together and probably get young guys through and try and get a strong squad together, and hopefully we can compete for a good league campaign and then push on maybe for a Tailteann Cup. You see what it brought to Westmeath and to Cavan. I think that's a competition there that I think a lot of counties are going to be looking at. That okay, there's something that we can really go after, and I think that's something that for me personally, it's a little carrot there for the next year, 2 or 3. As a player, that you could actually go after something and win something in Croke Park.
2 questions I'll leave you on. Has the Tailteann Cup re-energised maybe a lot of players and counties, maybe Division 3 and 4, obviously in particular? And you might kick off with this one. What was it like being mic'd up that time? And were you very aware of what you were saying or what you shouldn't say?
Yeah. Look, it was something different. It was you see different bits and pieces with American sport or even soccer coming. I think there was one with Rob Carney. It was something that was like, Jesus, you know what? When Billy said it was like an opportunity there, that something different. And I probably wasn't as cagey. Once it was on, you kind of got on with it. It was fine. I think it was more so the other lads around you that you might go for a quick chat beforehand or before the game, and it was almost like that Homer Simpson. They were just drifting into the bushes away from you. No one had talked to you, so there was a bit of that going on. But look, once the game was on, and it was just as normal. So it was something different, and it was kind of cool to see it from a different scope. And I'd say there was lots of unedited or unused clips too.
I don't know if I'd be able to use the filter now as well as some of you boys did. But just on the Tailteann Cup lastly, that was a roaring success, I have to say. But I had some doubts beforehand. It was more to do with the promotion of it and just to make sure that was going to be pushed, because I see what happens with the Joe McDonagh a lot of the time and it can be brushed under the carpet a bit. But like it got, pride of place, a couple of weekends, and the counties involved took it really, really seriously. And I know Mickey Graham said it after, that it was like he thinks it's only going to get harder to win every year.
I think so, and I think huge credit has to go to the GAA and Larry McCarthy for pumping it and giving it the time slots that it got, and the coverage that it got. Them talk that okay, the All Ireland final there yesterday could have been played before if the minor game wasn't going to be there. Does it get the same coverage or publicity if it was played in the same day? Look, the one thing about it is that there's room for slight changes or adaptations because it was a success this year, and that was the big thing to make sure that it was a success. Otherwise, you start going back to the drawing board and swapping and changing. Whereas now, little tweaks and changes can be made and adapted to try and progress this competition and progress with the idea that teams can progress with it and improve and set them up for competing in the Sam Maguire, and that's what it's about, a competition that you can kind of build on from year to year, rather than, I think in the past probably the likes of ourselves we've probably taken each year as a standalone year, whereas realistically with your S&C, with your tactics, your management, your nutrition. It doesn't work like that. You have to be taking it in 2-3 year blocks minimum if you want to progress. And probably as a county board as a whole, you're looking at 5 and 10 year plans. Whereas this Tailteann Cup is something there that you can plan to in the future for the next few years. And if improvements are made, you can start looking further up the field.
Brilliant. Mickey, thanks a million. You've been great with your time this morning. Really appreciate that.
Super. Thanks, Michael.
Hope to see you on the field next year again with a bit of luck next year and beyond. Good man.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks a million. Thanks a million. Good man. Just as Mickey said there, I thought it was, he mentioned Larry McCarthy there. I was very impressed, I have to say, with Larry McCarthy's speech, even when he was presenting the trophy to Sean O'Shea and Joe O'Connor, and just how he mentioned that the most important part of the GA calendar is kicking off in the club season. And I just thought it's refreshing to hear that there's a message, I would say, being put out there in some other media circles about, you know, the intercounty being over so early and the season is over and it's a disaster. It's most certainly not a disaster, and the grassroots are getting pride of place now for the rest of the year, which is great. And they're sure of their calendar. They know when they're going to be playing. So I have to say I'm a big fan of that. Just a couple of other results from the weekend. The All-Ireland Senior Camogie final is going to be Cork against Kilkenny this year. Kilkenny had a 113 to 12 points win over Galway in Croke Park. They dethroned the All-Ireland champions on Saturday night. And Cork eventually ground down Waterford. It was 15 points to 10. I know we get lots of questions in about whether we're going to be covering the club scene. I think it was Led Zeppelin had a question in there whether we're going to be covering the club scene. Just a couple of results from the Tipperary Championship. The reigning champions Lockmore Castleiney drew with Killadangan, 18 points apiece the other night. Conor Byrne, a sub for Killadangan, leveled it up at the end. Noel McGrath had 2 points for Lockmore, Liam McGrath 4. They're obviously missing John McGrath, who's out for the rest of the year, which is a big loss. Turda Sarsfields had a big win over Borrisoleigh, 223 to 114. Surprised at that result, I have to say. Borrisoleigh were 213 to 6 points adrift at half time. Brendan Maher went off with a hamstring injury as well, which is worrying for them going forward. Shane O'Neill obviously involved with Borrisoleigh there from a Turda Sarsfield's point of view. Missing Pádraig Maher, obviously, from now on, unfortunately, with that neck injury. That's a huge result there. And just mentioning Pádraig Maher, he's obviously going to be involved as a selector next year with Tipperary. So he's getting straight back in 1 year off the intercounty treadmill as a player, and he's getting involved in the management team with Liam Cahill, Nicky Beavens, and it's going to be interesting. Liam Cahill has got all his work done very, very quickly there, and they're ready to go for 2023 already. And what are we at? We're at July 25th. So he was in Semple Stadium the other night looking at games as well. So they're ready to go. It's amazing how things move in the GA and they change. That situation has changed very, very quickly. A couple of other results from Tip. Mikey Heffernan scored a late injury time free to get a draw for Nina Rogue. They drew 310 to 19 points with Clonouty Rossmore. They were kind of chasing the game the whole way, but got a draw at the finish. Other results, injury time points from Paddy Bradshaw and Kevin Fox earned Aerogue and a Carty, a draw with JK Brackens. It was 19 points to 16. Lyndon Fairbrother, very good on the freeze there for Brackens. Drummond Inch had a comfortable 230 to 219 win over Temple-Derry Kenyans. Just massive scores even within a 60-minute game. What are you looking at there? 49 points and 4 goals, 53 scores in a 60-minute game, which is outrageous in fairness. Upper Church Drumban had a 223 to 21 points win over Holy Cross Ballycal. Kilruan McDonough's were comfortable 422 to 10 points winners over Mike Carkey Boris. Good to see Niall O'Mara back involved there. He was obviously wasn't hurling with Tipperary this year. Keane Darcy got 2 goals as well. But probably the talk of the weekend, and anybody that saw the clip going around, was Owen Kelly coming off the bench for Mullinahone to salvage a 215 to 312 draw against Tumivara. Now, I don't know if the video footage is totally conclusive, but from the vantage point I was looking at, it definitely looked like the penalty that he got very, very late looked to have hit the flag on the outside of the goals. You'd only really maybe be able to see it properly if you looked from behind the goals. Maybe it went through the net, but the umpires were adamant that it was a goal. A lot of controversy in that. Regardless of the controversy, just Owen Kelly's ability to come in and still be an absolute nuisance and to turn the game is just something else. Like we're going back 12 years since he captained Tipperary to an All-Ireland senior hurling triumph, and he's still going strong with the club. He obviously was the main man when they won Senior B 2 years ago, and he's still going hard at it. They had a really good season last year, and just amazing with all the back problems that he's had, that he's still going. Pádraig Gill just had a comment in there. What about that Owen Kelly penalty? I can't decide if it was wide or a goal after watching it numerous times. I'm the same. Richard Hogan said the same. Me either. Very, very hard to tell from that angle. The umpires seemed adamant, saying that the Tumivara players seemed adamant that it wasn't a goal. But that controversy is still going around Tip, no doubt. So that's our All-Ireland hurling final, our All-Ireland football final review show. Thanks a million to John Evans and Mickey Quinn for joining us. Brought to you as always by orgaretro.com. This is the last we'll see of the Galway jersey. It's the last we'll see of any county jerseys at the men's level at the moment. We obviously have the ladies football final to come at the weekend. Meath and Kerry, novel enough pair. Kerry trying to dethrone Meath 10 years after their last final. Meath were obviously surprise winners last year. We have the Camogie to come the week after that, as I said earlier. Cork against Kilkenny. Davy Fitz, who has been rumoured for a couple of different inter-county hurling jobs at the moment. He's obviously involved with the Cork hurlers, and Brian Dowling involved with the Kilkenny Camogie team. I have to just a quick word as well on Brian Cody's departure as Kilkenny senior hurling manager. 24 seasons, 11 All-Irelands, I think it's 18 Leinsters, 10 leagues. Just an unbelievable managerial career. I'd say if I live till I'm 80 or 90, I probably still won't see another manager like him. Just an amazing career. Going to be really interesting to see who his successor is over the next while as well. If I was a betting man, which I am at times, I would imagine that Derek Ling would be the next Kilkenny senior hurling manager. Has served his apprenticeship under Cody. I'd imagine Cody would have a decent say in who the next manager is going to be, no more than Alex Ferguson did with Man United at the time. So Derek Ling would definitely be the front runner for me. Has been involved in the 20s for 2 or 3 years, probably 3 years, I think. They obviously won the under-20 All-Ireland this year as well. So I think they'd probably think on Northside that he's maybe ready for the job. Eddie Brennan is obviously available at the moment. There's talks of him being in the mix for, the Dublin job. His old job in Laois is available too, with the Waterford job available as well. So that'll be interesting there. And then you obviously have Henry in Galway. I think it would be a big surprise if Henry was over Kilkenny next year. Just the fact that I'm sure that he's probably committed to Galway at this stage, and just even with the controversy around the handshake and that, I can't see Henry Shefflin being the Kilkenny manager next year. Pádraig Gill just says the Burr B jersey will be dusted off. Yeah, we had a great win for the senior Bs in Burr the other night. We beat Tullamore by a point. You got Mick Mulrooney stroked over a last minute free to win it. And all attention turns to the club now. Offaly, like Tipperary and a few others, would have had the club season rolling over once once their county interest ended. But all focus turns to the club now, and it's just it's great. It's great to have it. It's great to have it. We're not even in August yet, and most counties will be back at it, which is brilliant. We will obviously have great coverage of the club campaigns over the next while. And we thank you for following us throughout the inter-county season. Obviously, if you want to get more content, exclusive content, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Thanks a million once again, as I said, to orgaretro.com. The best retro jerseys in the game. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off at orgaretro.com. A huge selection of jerseys there. I'm Michael Verney, and we will see you back very, very soon for the club season. Thanks a million, folks.